Right, hello, lads and lasses, and welcome back to Boys Down Under, where today we are talking about Europe and we are also talking about the potential debut of a Celtic B team player. Ooh, but before we get into the video though, please remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps support the channel heaps. But without further ado, let's get into it. So this isn't going to be a video, dwelling on what could have been for Celtic in Europe, how we could have, got first in the group, how we could have, made the knockouts of the Europa League. That's in the past. That is done. There's no point dwelling on the past. It's about the future. And the future for Celtic is a date with the runner-up of a Conference League group. Now, what this means for Celtic is that we now drop down into the Conference League, as we all know, and what we're going to be doing is we're going to be playing in the round of 32 against a second place team from one of the Conference League groups, and then the winners of all these matches go into the round of 16 where they meet the winners of the Conference League groups and the other, winners of the round of 32 tie. But the winners of the Conference League groups, they actually get to skip the round of 32 and they go straight into the round of 16. So it's a free-for-all in terms of the draw for once we get past that round of 32. But obviously, with one match day remaining, nothing is confirmed. Celtic, literally, we could not predict who Celtic could potentially face in the round of 32. But what we can do is create, as my maths teacher likes to call it, a sample space. Now, what a sample space is so basically we're just going to look at every single team Celtic could play right now. And at the moment, what we'll do is we'll look at all the second place teams in the group, and then we'll look at all the other teams who could drop into second or move up into second. So obviously, or not obviously, but right now Celtic could be playing, as for the second place teams, Maccabi Tel Aviv, Partizan Roma, Randers, Slavia Praha, Slovan Bratislava, Tottenham and Karabag. But then we have a huge number of other teams who Celtic could still possibly play, and these are LASK, Flora, Anthosis, Bodo Glimt, Jablonek, as we all know, have played them earlier this season, Union Berlin, PAOK or PAOK, Vitesse, and Basel. So there are a host of teams Celtic could still be playing, in this, knockout stage. But really, if we really look at all these teams, there's not really a single team that I would be, disappointed or worried, I guess we could say, about drawing. There's some good teams in this draw, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of good teams here, but there's no real teams that if Celtic drew, I'd think, oh, we're in for a real tough time. You could argue Tottenham, you could argue Roma, but after what Celtic put out against Bayer Leverkusen, it's kind of like Celtic really could take anyone on if they put their minds to it and play for the full 90 minutes. Now, actually, in saying what I said earlier, maybe there are a couple teams that I would, maybe not want to verse. Karabag, mainly because we'd have to go to Azerbaijan to play them, and that's literally that's a big no for travel concerns. Well, not travel concerns, but like for the players. We don't want them traveling all the way to Azerbaijan. Maccabi Tel Aviv, they're in Israel, so maybe not them as well. But realistically, like I'm saying, that there's no teams I would be worried about drawing. And honestly, I welcome the challenge of the better teams. I welcome the challenge of, Roma. I welcome the challenge of Ghent, Tottenham. That's really it. But every team we verse will certainly bring it to Celtic. There's no doubt about that. It's just about how Celtic rise to the occasion or how Celtic nullify these opposition teams. But look, like I said, any team we get, I will be happy, because a lot of these would be very sick teams to play. I can't remember Celtic playing some of these teams in any time recently. Personally, I would love, a draw against maybe, I'd say maybe Union Berlin. I'd like Germany. That's not bad. Yeah, we're gonna go Union Berlin. That's fingers crossed for Union Berlin right here. But moving on to some very, very exciting news. Well, it's not really news. It's more of a possibility that could occur. So in a way it's news, but in a way it's not news. So hang on with me here. But as most of us are aware, but if you're not aware, Nearbaton against Leverkusen actually picked up a head knock, and From that head knock, he did show some signs of concussion, having to lie down, not being able to move. He seemed very out of it, so he did show signs of concussion. Now, before he left the field, and what that means is that if Niabaton were to have suffered a concussion, I'm pretty sure due to, new footballing law, because the whole world is taking concussion so much more seriously nowadays, as it should, the new rules, I think, state that he would be ineligible to play against Aberdeen because he needs to be given adequate time to recover from the concussion. And as we all know, concussion affects people differently. So right now, if he were to have suffered a concussion, that means he'd be out of contention for the Aberdeen match. So why am I telling you guys this? Well, it has a possible couple of lead-on effects, one of them being extremely, extremely exciting. Now, firstly, if Tom Rogic, who was close to return against Leverkusen, allegedly, if Tom Rogic does in fact miss out on this Aberdeen match, well, it leaves Celtic with only two, regular midfielders in David Turnbull and Callum McGregor. It gives Ange two options that I think a lot of people would instantly go to, and that's, to play James McCarthy or Ismaila Soro in that CDM spot, in the CDM role that's been left open by Niabaton if he has in fact suffered a concussion. Now, as I'm sure most of us can infer by this point, Ange is not a big fan of either Soro or McCarthy. I think he's very reluctant to play them, and he only wants to rotate the squad and to give players rest, but he doesn't want to bring them on when the result is in a balance. He was obviously forced to for Niabaton, but I may have came up a solution to this issue, and the solution is Owen Moffat. Now, Moffat, as we all know, very lively and one of the best players in the Celtic B team right now, and he's an attacking mid by nature, and he is, in my opinion, the perfect player to bring up in a situation like this. We saw last time against Aberdeen, we needed Tom Rogic to come on and work his magic, work his wizardry to get us all 3 points against Aberdeen. We saw it wasn't going to work, leaving David Turnbull up in the cam role for the full 90 minutes. Obviously, we got a goal from an amazing ball from him, but you could see he kind of lacked that quality to break down the Aberdeen's, very, very strong defence. So what I propose is that we hand Mr. Moffat his Celtic debut. Now, yes, it may be very, very and slightly... bugger it off. It may be slightly unfair to hand Owen his Celtic debut in a match like this, but it kind of, if you think about it, and I'll explain it, it kind of all checks out. So, firstly, Celtic are at home. Big positive there because the crowd will be there willing him on and cheering him on. And as a younger footballer, getting your debut at home would provide especially somewhere like Celtic Park, so good for his development. He can take on that positive motivation and hopefully really perform for the team. If it was at somewhere like Dens Park, you don't know, he wouldn't get that because he'd be hold abuse by the opposition fans. So look, I think it's encouraging. Firstly, Celtic Park, that's a tick right there. Debut at Celtic Park, big tick. Secondly, and I think this is the more important part that checks out, is that Celtic and Ange can revert back to a midfield triangle that was working so well for Celtic. Now, what that triangle was that we had McGregor as the CDM, then we had David Turnbull playing that box-to-box midfield role, and then you had Tommy Rogic up at cam. And ever since his unfortunate injury, luckily it was only a month, it's only been a month or so he's been out for, but still, we've had to see Turnbull and McGregor move up a spot and then slot Niabaton into that CDM role. And obviously, we've all seen, we lack just that hint of wizardry, creativity that Rogic brings. So why not start Owen Moffat? Why not play McGregor back at CDM? Why not move Turnbull back to centre mid in their, what it seems to be their more natural positions, and play Moffat in his natural position? Because he's so young, he's got so much energy about him. He could really spark something in this Celtic team and get us all 3 points against Aberdeen. And look, I think heading into, what's going to be a very congested month of December for Celtic and a month where squad rotation is going to be absolutely key and squad depth, why not kick it off with handing Owen Moffat his debut and giving Tommy Rogic, that extra match to rest and an extra match to, get to 100%? Because he might be at 95% if we start him, but we want him at 100% because that 5% could, as we know with Tom Rogic, lead to another bad injury and see him on the sidelines for longer and longer. And like I said, with this squad depth and squad rotation, we all know Celtic don't have good squad depth at all. We're going to have to rely on, I think, some B team players and, some of the players on the outside like Urhoghide and Liam Shaw to, really make up those numbers for Celtic, because playing a midweek game and a weekend game for 4 consecutive weeks is not going to be good for the players. But look, at the end of the day, Niabaton might not have suffered concussion at all. It may have been, a precautionary substitution, I guess we could say, in case he had suffered one. And Tom Rogic might be 100% fit. He might be ready to go. He might be edging for this return, and Ange might have no option but to give him his return match against Aberdeen. And look, that would force Baton out of the squad, or it would give Turnbull a well-earned rest. But if worse comes to worse, however, in my opinion, giving Owen Moffat his Celtic debut would not be a terrible option at all, and I think would be a better option than starting James McCarthy or Ismaila Soro. But that is all from me. So remember to drop in the comments below what you think about Owen Moffat and whether you think he should get his Celtic debut. Also, drop in the comments below who you want to get in the round of 32 game against, in the Conference League. Who do you want to see Celtic drawn against? Who do you guys want an away day against? But remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and until next time, hail, hail.